Yes, we're so happy that all of you are here. And we have some really exciting pieces coming up. Um, and yeah, I'm just thrilled to be spending time with you all and meeting a lot of our contributors for the first time.
Yeah, it's so lovely to see all of you in person. I have communicated with all of you in various forums, and it is so surreal and strange and wonderful to see all of your faces.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
match the faces to the beautiful pieces of writing.
Yeah, we feel like we know each of you like very, very deeply already.
Yeah.
So, let's see. We're gonna start with Kiera. Kiera, how you feeling? You feel like ready to go? I'm gonna do like a little introduction first, and then I'm so excited for Kiera's presentation. So a little background. In her essay, Ghosts in the Video Game Console, Kiera Johnson invites us to look at video games as more than simple pastimes, but as methods of engaging privately and immediately with troubled histories. Her scholarship reminds us that video games, as opposed to films or written texts, force us to act, to make choices, to play out narratives as if they are our own stories, forcing us to contend with horrors in an experiential capacity. Kiera Johnson is a literary translator, writer, and speculative fiction enthusiast, specializing in Chinese, Taiwanese, and queer works of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Recent areas of academic focus include queer monstrosity in Taiwanese lesbian fiction, biopolitics in Taiwanese climate fiction, and ghosts in video games. And if that's not a cool bio, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So, Kiera, if you're ready, we are ready and so excited for your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and pin you and
Great,
then
thank you.
take it away.
Yeah.
Right, are you able to enable screen sharing for me, please? Because I've got a PowerPoint.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And yeah, just while this is happening, thank you so much for hosting this event and publishing this issue. It's honestly such an honor to be included in it and speaking today. And I really can't wait to hear from everyone else as well.
Thank you, Kiera. You should be able to share. Let me know if you have any issues.
Yes, I think, are you able to
Yeah,
see that?
perfect. Looks great.
Great. Okay. So, yes, hi, I'm Kiera. I'm going to be talking today about horror in video games and how the genre can explore topics of trauma and repression, in particular in the context of authoritarianism, and in particular talking about the video game detention from Taiwan. I'm going to be adding in a couple things that I didn't talk about in the article, sort of in the hopes that if you've already read that, or if you go to read it after this, hopefully you can still get something new from this rather than just hearing the same thing twice. I will say, though, that there's a massive spoiler warning. I kind of can't talk about it without spoiling the game again, detention. Um, so if that's something that you're sort of wanting to avoid, maybe just put me on mute and turn the sound back on for the other speakers. But I do think it's a game that benefits from knowing the story so you can appreciate the foreshadowing as you go along. I'm also going to give a trigger warning. The game does talk about suicide. So if that's something that you know can trigger you, then just please take care of yourself. So as I've mentioned, Detention, it's a Taiwanese video game developed by Red Candle Games in 2017, but it's set in the 1960s, which is at the height of the martial law period in Taiwan. For those of you who are maybe unaware, Taiwan was under martial law from 1949 to 1987, which is the second longest period of martial law in the world after Syria. And unfortunately, I don't really have the time to get fully into the factors and causes that led to martial law. But I think the most important things for you to know are that Taiwan was under the control of the nationalist government with Chiang Kai-shek at the time. And the same year that martial law was put in place, the nationalists lost the Chinese Civil War to Mao Zedong's Communist Party and fled to establish the Republic of China in Taiwan. There were existing tensions between the mainland Chinese and the Taiwanese people, and this, coupled with the nationalist government's paranoia about communist infiltration, led them, as you see in the quote, to prioritize stability and security of the regime over the Taiwanese people's civil liberties. The martial law period was really characterized by a loss of freedom for the Taiwanese people. There's no freedom of speech, no freedom of assembly. Censorship was very strict. The state's paranoia led to a pervasive surveillance system, and military police would arrest, interrogate, torture, and execute civilians at really the slightest hint of subversive activity. So it's a very dark period in Taiwanese history, and episodes from this time remain contentious to this day. And this is the context, as I say, for detention, where you, the player, control Fang Rixin, known as Ray in the English translation of the game, who's a high school student in a fictional school. And after a short prologue, you wake up as Ray in the auditorium of the school to find your classmate, Wei Zhongting, dead behind you, as you see in the screenshot, and the school now abandoned and haunted by ghosts. You then have sort of 3 to 4 hours of runtime to explore the school, try to figure out what happened here, and find a way for Ray to escape. I mentioned that the school is haunted, and these are your sort of video game enemies. But detention is a combat-free game, so there's no way for you to fight and win as you might in a different game. Instead, you can only try to avoid these enemies. And detention does this by drawing on Taiwanese folklore, which states that if you're holding your breath, the ghosts can't see you and they won't attack you. So this is the primary mechanic that you can use to avoid getting attacked and killed in the game. But I think it's also one of the more interesting aspects of the game in the way that it combines these supernatural horror elements with the political setting, because every aspect of the game is intrinsically tied to its political grounding in martial law. It's trying to reproduce those emotional conditions. And you can see that through the animation that accompanies the holding your breath mechanic. You can see here that Ray is crouching in place when she's holding her breath. She's got one hand physically silencing herself, and your movement speed is considerably slowed for the entire time that she's holding her breath, which I think can reflect one of the aspects of life under repressive authoritarianism, which is often talked about, which is self-censorship, where it's safer to police yourself rather than wait for the state to do that and potentially invite violent reprisals. So you have here the image of this high school student who's silencing herself out of fear of danger. But at the same time, this self-censorship or this mindset is also felt by the player. At times, the game's soundtrack can almost mimic the sound of the ghosts, which can trick you into thinking that there's a ghost up ahead when really there's nothing there. So you'll activate this mechanic, severely slow your progress through the level, only to find out that there was no danger there at all, and you slowed yourself down for no reason. You also have internalized this self-censoring mindset. And there's multiple times throughout the game where the player and Ray are aligned with one another. You feel her emotions, her fear and uncertainty, and you act alongside her and through her. It's this immersion in simulated version of lived experience of martial law, who for many players haven't experienced that. It's an entry point to understanding the psychological repercussions of life under such a political system. I think, though, that it can have a very interesting impact on the narrative of the game as well. So I mentioned that it starts with her waking up in the auditorium with her classmate behind her, and then you go on to explore and you're solving puzzles as you try to figure out what happened here. One of the first puzzles in the game involves the classmate Wei Zhongting, and the only solution to this puzzle, again, sorry, spoilers, is to slit his throat and collect his blood in a bowl. It's a really horrible moment in the game, and Detention doesn't shy away from the horror of this moment. The player, you have to physically control the blade as it moves across his throat. And then you see Ray's reaction of guilt, but at the same time, helplessness, because there is no other solution to this puzzle. This is the only thing that you can do in this moment. So through this, you're aligned with Ray and identify with her emotions and feel really the helplessness of the situation. But the true significance of this moment, I think, isn't felt until later in the game, when you fully piece together the story of what actually happened in the school here. It's revealed that there used to be an underground book club which operated in the past, which was run by two teachers, Yin Sui Han and Zhang Wenhui, and the classmate Wei Zhongting was a member of this book club. They would read banned books and act in defiance of the authoritarian government's repression of knowledge. Now, Ray wasn't a member of this book club, but she had feelings for the school counselor, Zhang Wenhui, and she would see the teachers together and misunderstood their relationship and believed that Miss Yin was her romantic rival of sorts. So she decides she needs to get this rival out of the way. She's going to get revenge on her, and she convinces her classmate, Wei Zhongting, to give her the book club's reading list, which she then turns over to the military police presence in the school. Her plan is Miss Yin is going to get fired. Everything else is fine. She can pursue Zhang Wenhui in peace. But she drastically misunderstands the severity of the book club's crimes in the eyes of the authoritarian government, which is symbolized really poignantly by the book club's reading list appearing in your inventory as a gun. As a result of her actions, all members of the book club are arrested and executed, apart from Miss Yin, who escapes abroad, and the classmate Wei Zhongting, who signs a confession to be imprisoned rather than executed. And Ray never saw any of this coming. And as a result of her guilt and her shame over what her actions have led to, she kills herself by jumping off the roof of the school. It's then revealed that the game that you have been playing alongside her is just one round of a purgatory-like cycle where she is continually reliving and re-experiencing her betrayal of the book club and the consequences of her actions as a result of her guilt and her shame. It's a horrible realization, and the game does not shy away from the fact that Ray's actions are absolutely morally reprehensible. It absolutely condemns her for this. But I don't think that Detention leaves it at simple condemnation. It goes on a slightly deeper level, because the player has already been made complicit with her actions through the puzzles where you are yourself betraying Wei Zhongting and feeling her emotions, her fear, her helplessness. The immersiveness of the horror genre and the interactivity of the video game medium make the player complicit and at the same time feel the same emotions that Ray does. So we still absolutely condemn her actions, and at no point are they excused. But we go beyond that to admit that she can be both the perpetrator of great harm as well as a victim herself of state violence under such extreme circumstances as martial law. And then I think where Detention really comes into its own is in the game's final chapter, because by this point you have the full story and the player can't change what Ray has done. You can't take back her actions and the damage has already been done. But what Detention suggests is more important is choosing how things end. We can't change the past, but we can change where we go from here. And in the final chapter, you have a series of conversations with Ray's shadow self, as it were, which you can see in the top screenshot there. And this shadow self asks several questions, which are trying to determine what Ray has learned from reliving her past, this time through the purgatory cycle. And there's two possible endings. To get the bad ending, which keeps Ray trapped in the same purgatory cycle, you have to answer in a way that suggests she's learned nothing, that she doesn't want to confront her actions, There's a really famous quote from the game, which you see in the bottom screenshot. Have you forgotten, or do you not want to remember? To get the bad ending, you have to have Ray not want to remember. To get the good ending, on the other hand, then, you have to answer in a way that suggests Ray is willing to face the past, no matter how painful it is, to fully come to terms with her guilt and the consequences of her actions, however unknowing they were when it happened. And with the good ending, then, you end with this image. The man here is Wojtowick, the classmate who was imprisoned and has now been released at the end of martial law, now middle-aged. And then you have Ray, who in the good ending, she's still a ghost. She's still unable to pass on and be at peace. And I think that speaks to the immensity of a national trauma like the martial law period, that some things can't simply be left at peace. They will continue to re-erupt as traumatic after effects. But she's here facing her victim and actually confronting her guilt and her shame. We don't see the two characters reconcile. You never see Ray get forgiven, and I don't think that's the point. I think Detention is very clear that some things can't be apologized for one time and then never mentioned again or forgotten, that would be the wrong action to take. Instead, it's suggesting that we learn to live with the horror of the past, make what amends we can, and try as best as possible to act in a way that prevents similar situations happening in the future. And I think this is important, not just for Taiwan with its martial law history and the conversations that are still happening today about that period, but also wider for other countries that have histories of repression and really great violence. So for myself in the UK, that would be Britain's history with colonialism, imperialism, which continues to exert a very negative impact on the present day. For those of you who are in the United States and other countries, the same is true. I think Detention is trying to tell us through this interactive experience that it is painful to confront these haunted histories. It's difficult to treat them with the nuance and care that they deserve. But no matter how painful and challenging it is, it's absolutely vital and necessary that we continue to do that work. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kiera. That was absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I can't recommend reading Kiera's piece enough. I've never played the game. I don't play video games, and I still was deeply riveted reading your piece, and it gave me a perspective I don't think I ever would have gotten anywhere else. So I highly encourage you to take a look at Kiera's piece online. Thank you so much. And I'm going to
Thank
pass it
you.
over to Anna to introduce Mo.
Thank you so much, Kiera. Mo Fowler is our next reader. Mo Fowler's poetry is like walking through an old empty house, soft with age and a din of voice and memory floating between the lines. Mo Fowler is a poet, an MFA candidate at UC Irvine, and the author of the chapbook Sit Wild, published by Finishing Line Press. Their writing can be found in Rough Cut Press, Rust Plus Moth, Zone 3 magazine, and elsewhere. Please welcome Mo, our next reader. I'm gonna
Hi everyone.
Oh.
Thrilled to be here on this Sunday. I'm gonna start by reading the piece that's in issue 2. That feels like a good place to begin. And it's called Muriel. Muriel works at a museum that is a house where nobody lives, and that is the whole point. The house was built years ago, and her job, most importantly, is to always be changing it. People say a lot of smart things about the house, about the ways it allows for people to look and to look and to look. In the kitchen, there is a woman screaming in the air of her baby's face, blue paint smattered across her back, and the baby's eyes gone completely pink in the iris. Of course, there is scandal. Muriel has always paid her rent checks in scandal. The bathroom is entirely pea soup green at the moment, and one of the museum cats has taken up residence in the shower, where last week Muriel piled dried alligator hands. In the living room, she has actors sit posed as a young couple in the middle of an argument over whether they can go their whole lives without sleeping with anyone else. Scandal means a story people are actually paying attention to. Derrida's cat famously watched the philosopher walk around the house naked, the animal as a mirror. Scandal means someone knows how to be hurt in an interesting way. There are 3 cats in the museum that Muriel feeds every day, but other than that is not allowed to interact with because they are employees there to do a job, not to be her pet. Muriel changes the baby's eyes to gray. The child sees themselves in the mirror and recognizes their body having, and then their separation from the body in the mirror. The room is silent, and the rooms are all mirrors. A man who knew nothing once told her that museums are society's history. Muriel takes a sip from her thermos while she strolls along the racks in the basement. She opens a drawer with 4 lilac-necked herons and draws out her favorite, lays it across her arm, closes the drawer with her hip, and heads back up to the house. That man would not count scandals as history. No one lives here. Muriel opens the heron's eyes. Yay. Okay, and then I'm going to read, I think, 3 newer pieces. The fun thing about poetry and the publishing cycle is that that one was probably 2 years ago. So it's we're going to zoom forward in time to some pieces I'm currently working on.
Fantastic.
This second one is called As Threat. There are 2 kids playing in the field where no one can see them. It's shadowed back here by the biggest trees at school and the perfect place to practice. One girl, hair pulled back into a tight tail, punches the other on her stomach, just above her jeans. They talk about the kids who missed class that day, and the one in the pants punches ponytail back. Another hit and another. They are getting better every time they come back here. The girl in the jeans groans. She checks already for bruises. The one with the ponytail winds her arm up and grunts. She lets it fly. Finally, they do a complicated handshake and then press their whole bodies together, intertwining at the legs and toppling over, rolling across the field, all tangled, and into the creek, and we hit the water, and you become a trout wriggling in my arms, hard eyes and speckled flesh. I've never seen you scared before. My clothes catch on the rocks, so I grasp tighter. Okay. This one's called I Trust You. I regret that we kissed your family urn, left behind a small damp of spit in the shape of a fence post, and that after we laid on the kitchen floor, your fingers in my mouth and telling me how Young's grandson was the only one who got away with taking the hat from the old man's head, the one who could be laughed at. You were a horse I'd only seen in the binder of a girl who told me, pick your favorite and pretend. You were an entire mythology of small snakes curled up inside ripe tomatoes. I won't help you muddy your mother's house anymore. Can't be tempted back into taking your philosophies seriously. Seeing you again is actually so easy now that I am 9 feet tall. Okay. And one final one. This one's called Month of the Frozen Goat. I lie in a woman's room and stare up at her Pulp Fiction poster while she tells me how the movie cured her. I am so glad. I'm still waiting on Hollywood to get to me, I tell her. I think it would need to be a film of every moment of someone's entire life, and there's a lot of scenes where they spill their drinks across a desk, and it ruins everything, and it would take me my entire life to watch. She says there are lots of movies just about people. I storm down to the street, my bag smacking snow off the bricks of the building in my excitement. But I don't want to live in the kind of movie where I leave, so I tap the taxi driver on his shoulder and lever myself out of the car and climb the stairs back up to her. I just haven't been sleeping. Can we please stay friends? She kisses me. She tells me, you do need to make real friends. You should talk to the people in line at the store. Bring toilet paper if someone is ever crying. Uma Thurman smiles down at us, and it costs me nothing to be taught in this way. The large sticky wax green candle on the nightstand won't seem to go down despite our nightly burnings. It is cold in this apartment, and I am giving up everything. I wish there were no churches, I tell her, but I do feel changed every time I walk into a building old enough. I remember that goats carry their eyes sideways, and my whole body too. There is a painter who met the woman's mother in a language course for refugees 29 years ago, and ever since, this painter has been making work based on her mother and the rest of her family. I ask if she has any of them, and she gestures to the closet, portrait after portrait of her as a baby in one set of arms after another. She's wearing a small orange shirt in every one. She says, anyway, tomorrow I am posing for a new painting with all 4 of my mother's birds, 2 in my arms and 1 on each shoulder. And when she paints me for hours like that, it is like someone taking the weight of all my bones for me. I tell her that sounds like a different thing than remembering your whole body, and she rolls her eyes. Of course. She nods, lifting a cold finger to trace a cross on my forehead, her smile like the pink sliver at the edge of an eyelid, and then gone. Yay. Thank you guys so much. So excited for all the rest of these.
Thank you so much, Mo. I'm so excited we got to hear more. What a gift. Um, let's see. Stephanie, I'm going to introduce you now. I'm very honored to do so. Stephanie McCullough's Beg for Mercy calls you to shriek, to dance, to engage in some kind of wild, strange, rhapsodic catharsis. Beg for Mercy defies genre categorization, but if it could be defined, perhaps iconoclastic high camp rapture, chaos prayer for bloody destiny, or perhaps, as she begins her piece, ritual for conjuring gay revenants. Stephanie Lynn McCullough is a writer and artist predominantly working in digital video and sculpture. She is currently based in Providence, Rhode Island, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She describes her work as fairy tales of transformation where queer creatures feminize, liquefy, hatch, nest, masculinize, encode, warp, crystallize, androgynize, fold, shift, shed, and meditate. Stephanie, we're so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for that introduction. That was wonderful. Yeah, so I Beg for Mercy has become part of a larger project, mostly using digital video and video installation, which I've entitled Wires to Worms. And in this larger project, Nellie Vaughan, Rhode Island's premier vampire dyke and cyber ghostlet, is cyclically reborn and laid to rest in the space between physical and digital realms. So I wanted to show and share some about a 10-minute excerpt of this video project that I've been working on, that is continues kind of some of the narrative of Beg for Mercy, but more importantly, just resurrects Nellie Vaughan in a digital space. Yeah, so I will attempt to share my screen. And I hope that the audio will share well, or share it at a good volume, but I guess people can let me know if it needs to be adjusted. Same. Restless, same. Restless. 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 Restless, same. Restless, same. Sorry, I'm just pausing it because I was told that maybe the audio is sharing weird. Is it coming across?
Stephanie, I think when you click share my screen, make sure you're optimizing sound as well as video.
Let me stop sharing and
I can walk you through it.
optimize for video clip. Okay, I think that's what I.
Yeah, and make sure you're also optimizing for sound.
Um,
Let me tell you exactly what it says. So under advanced, or on the side it'll say share sound as
Mhm.
well. And optimize for video clips. So just check both of those options.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have this clicked before, but now
Perfect.
should be. And do you know if I should mute myself or if?
I don't think that part matters.
Okay, so I can, I.
Yeah, I think so. If we don't hear anything, I'll let you know.
I'm just gonna run it back to the beginning if we have time.
Yes, no problem at all.
Sound better? Slightly?
Yeah,
Way better.
sounds great.
We seek a monster, so we may learn how to embrace the vile and the future.
In life, I was told when I would bathe, and in death, I was told where I would be buried. Through all, my sickness festered in the uncleanable corners of my lungs. In 1889, it overtook me completely. I stared through the bloody curtains of my languid, undead torpor to earth, dirt, worm, dust, dusk, degenerate, blood, night, tide, web, soap. Girls and computers, larvae and worms. Your device's obsolescence will be accelerated. The roots of sin run deep. Piety and chastity are terms that will be deleted from the database. The baptismal font will be infested with malware. Irregularities spawned at birth will no longer be curbed. Your children will make their own monstrosity. Nature, after all, is not clean. Nature is unholy. True nature is only to be revealed with a scalpel. I am the putrid butterfly. I am the moral virus. I am Nellie Vaughn.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Like,
I need like a moment of silence to recover.
thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited I got to share that.
Impeccable
So
Sunday
awesome.
vibes. Like the best Sunday afternoon vibes in the whole wide world.
You're all just the coolest group of people.
You know, how'd you guys get so cool? This is amazing. Also, I mean, now you know you have to check out Stephanie's piece.
Yeah.
It's like
Please, please, everyone, go read Beg for Mercy. Please.
incredible. So excited to see the visual component of your work. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm so happy I could share it. I think Kate asked in the chat if there was time for me to talk a little bit about it. I have more I can say.
Yes,
If there
please
is
go
time.
ahead. I would love to
Yeah,
know.
please.
Yes, okay, so I have a little written portion, but I guess just to make it more clear, like these video clips are pieces I've been preparing for a digital installation, like an installation using projected video that will be in Providence, Rhode Island, on April 11th at the Woods-Gary building on the campus of Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. I don't know if any of you are, close proximity to that at all, but if you happen to be,
Actually, one of the team members at Bloodletter lives in Rhode Island.
oh,
So
really?
yes.
Yeah, well, I can share more details about that if they're interested, but Yeah, so I can just read a tiny portion, like describing that installation, but the circle room of Woodsgary will become haunted by an unknowable queer entity. Nellie Vaughn, Rhode Island's premier vampire dyke and cyber ghost slut, will be haunting that space. A summoning circle of cracked and weathered compact discs and dirt will surround a white pedestal between the size of a bathtub and a casket. Atop the pedestal will be a handful of CDs and flash drives, which will carry clips of Nellie Vaughn in the form of those video clips. Nellie Vaughn's salacious nightmares and debaucherous desires will bleed through a suspended projector onto that pedestal, where they will reflect off of the CDs. Multi-channel audio will be played over suspended speakers, which will allow Nellie's voice to move around the space. I will also potentially be performing as one of her devout deviants, kissing each and every CD on the ground, leaving red lipstick stains. The projected video uses both digitally animated and live action elements to carry out a ritual of resurrection for a being which is constantly decaying, a bath for a being that is eternally filthy, and a casket viewing for a being which never fully dies. The projection also fills the space with dirt, water, leeches, worms, and blood as Nellie Vaughn gains power through creation/possession of bodies and bathes in the pleasure of their slow deterioration. In the climax of the video, Nellie's lips, formed by leeches, command onlookers to take a piece of her body in the form of the CD and flash drives, inviting her into their phones, computers, and cars. That invitation is the second half of that clip that you saw at the end of the video, which was cut out for this excerpt. Gender-affirming care is a term that was retroactively applied to mostly pre-existing treatments. These medical procedures were developed to codify the gender binary through performing surgeries on often unconsenting intersex individuals. The plasticity of bodies was and continues to be exploited in this name of gender and sex purity to uphold a binary. We as trans individuals are birthed into an existing relationship with this bloody search for purity and immortality of the status quo. For some of the first trans people to gain access to these procedures for cross-sex purposes could only do so by fabricating narratives about being intersex individuals. A queer person who seeks gender-affirming procedures perverts the treatment's original intent, especially when they do not cleanly fit into any binary. This is dark queer actualization. In Susan Stryker's My Words to Victor Frankenstein, she says, "I want to lay claim to the dark power of my monstrous identity, without using it as a weapon against others or being wounded by it myself. I will say this as bluntly as I know how. I am a transsexual, and therefore I am a monster." Nellie Vaughn is perpetually re-embracing the monstrosity of her own queerness. She is a revenant of queer resistance, and she looks to spread her filthy cells across the digital, spiritual, and physical realms to become unhuntable, uncleanable, and unsilenceable. She seeks to feed off the rage and fear of those who cling to ideas of purity and nature, but also to become closer to all of the queer people who have been murdered or taken too soon, such as her vampire lover, Mercy Brown. Yeah, so that's her kind of a little bit of like inspiration and background information about that piece.
I'm so glad we got
Oh my
that.
God, thank you so much.
Yeah, and Viva will make sure is there for your performance.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah, please do.
Thanks, Stephanie. That was really, really incredible. Okay. Jennifer, I'm so excited to introduce you. Funny story. Jennifer and I met at a film festival, I think exactly 4 years ago. It was the last time I was on an airplane right before COVID shut down. And then now I'm here. So it's a little bit full circle. So Jennifer, is it Trudrung? Am I saying that right?
It's Trudrung. It's
Trudrung. Okay, great.
It's ridiculous.
Glad I now know correctly, finally, 4 years in. Okay, Jennifer Trudrung, got it, captures the complicated grief of loss in her short story, The Rattle. Her narrative is haunting, the descriptions within it stirring, plaintive, and completely raw. Jennifer Trudrung's love of horror stretches both in front of and behind the camera. As an actress, she's appeared in film and television series, including The Vampire Diaries, Goosebumps, and Halloween Kills. As a screenwriter and producer, she's built quite the filmography of short horror films, including the award-winning shorts Here There Be Tigers, based on the Stephen King story, and Unbearing. Jennifer has also written several award-winning screenplays, including Spectrum and Nighttime is No Fun Anymore. Plus, she penned the feature film The Nest, which is currently available everywhere on VOD. So Jennifer, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Stephanie, you're a hard act to follow. That was all of y'all, you're all brilliant. I'm very honored to be here with all of you. And I actually am going to read a work in progress. Short stories are new to me. I wrote them when I was very young, and then I started writing screenplays, and I'm revisiting writing short stories again. And The Rattle, I'm so honored as part of this magazine, but it was a hard one for me to write. It's very deeply personal, and I tend to deal with grief and trauma by making it even more horrifying. So I want to read from this work in progress, and it's called Sand Fleas. And again, it deals with grief, but in a very different way than The Rattle. So thank you. Okay, so the title is Sand Fleas. Jen took a bite of her glazed donut and glanced over at her dad. Unshaven with dark hair, he wore a brand new green fishing hat. One freckled hand on the steering wheel of the '79 truck, and the other tapping along on his knee to the beat of the Gambler. An open beer can sat cocked between his legs while several smashed ones rolled along the floor of the truck. Her dad bobbed his head and sang along with Kenny in an off-key yet charming way. Jen giggled, and he looked over and winked at her. She smiled, took another bite of the donut, and sat up straighter to look out the window to orientate herself. Her main concern was if they were nearing the bridge. The sky had brightened, and pink and yellow hues made her face glow as she peered out. She let out a small sigh when she saw they were on the part of the interstate that ran above the downtown area. She did a mental calculation, about 5 more minutes. Her dad grabbed a cigarette from the open pack of Marlboros on the truck's bench and hummed along as the Little River Band sang the Lonesome Loser. Jen punched in the lighter button and grabbed it carefully when it popped out. Her dad leaned towards her, the cigarette dangling from his mouth, and she pushed the red coils against the tip. He breathed in, and a plume of smoke billowed from his nose. Jen pushed the lighter back into the spot by the ashtray, which was stuffed with ash and old cigarettes. She ate the last bite of her donut as her dad rolled down his window and blew out. She held her dad's old but beloved light blue fishing hat tight on her head as the wind whipped around her. Her short blonde curls made her neck itch, and her t-shirt billowed in the open air. The truck merged onto Highway 90, and she saw the sign ahead, 3 Mile Bridge. Her dad smashed his cigarette into the ashtray and reached into a small container full of cassette tapes. He pulled out a tape. He met Jen's worried eyes, winked again, and pushed the tape into the truck's cassette player. As the truck drove onto the bridge covering the expanse of Pensacola Bay, Jen and her dad sang along to Lollipop, popping the inside of their cheeks with a finger. And Jen tried very hard not to imagine how fast the truck would sink if they accidentally crashed through the guardrail. She tried very hard not to think about the salt water streaming inside the truck as she took her last few breaths before descending and drifting into watery darkness full of sharks and other fish that would nibble away at her skin and bones. Jen didn't understand this fear, but it happened every time. She loved going fishing with her dad, but hated this long bridge with its skinny lanes and short guardrails. The Lollipop was their talisman. It kept her dad driving straight, and soon they made it to the other side and entered the township of Gulf Breeze. One more short bridge, which didn't hold the same anxiety as the 3-mile bridge, and Pensacola Beach came into view. They both sat up in anticipation. He crushed his last cigarette, took a sip of his beer, and rolled up the window. The air outside was getting hot, and the sun was low in the horizon. The colorful sunrise hues were gone, and the rich blue sky and white sands were blinding. Unwittingly, they both pulled down their hats at the same time. Jen watched as the beach houses disappeared in the background, including the truly exciting landmark Spaceship House, and tried to see the rolling waves of the beach beyond the long stretches of grass-covered dunes surrounding the road. A couple miles later, her dad pulled the truck over and they parked in the small, sandy, empty parking lot. They hopped out and walked to the back of the truck. Her dad grabbed 2 fishing poles, a cooler, a folding chair, a bag of drinks, and towels. He handed Jen the other folding chair, a gallon bucket, and 2 nets. One was small, just right for her, while the other dragged behind her as they climbed over the dunes. And then the roar of the ocean synced with the view, and Jen took a deep breath. She smiled up at her dad, and he smiled back. Not another soul on the beach, and they walked down to the shore. They set their chairs down in the sand, and while her dad messed with the line and hooks on the fishing poles, Jen set the big net down and wandered down to the shoreline with her small net and bucket. She watched as the water ran up and waited until it ran back out to sea. She dug her feet into the wet sand and moved them around as the water ran back up and danced around her ankles. When the water pulled back out, she pushed the net into the sand in front of her, moving her feet and lifting it once the wave had been pulled out to sea. Her net was full of wet sand and also full of what she was hoping to catch. As the water rushed up over her feet again, she held the bottom of the net in the water and watched as the sand washed away, and several inch-long and white crab-like creatures were revealed, shifting clumsily in the sand. She laughed gleefully and dumped the sand and creatures into her bucket. She ran the bucket over to her dad, and he whistled happily as he pulled out the sand fleas and baited their bodies onto the hooks of his 2 poles. Jen grabbed the bucket and net and ran back down to the shoreline. She repeated this until she had caught over a dozen of the sand fleas. She left the bucket with her dad, gave him a wave as he smoked and drank a beer, nodding his approval and watching her walk away. As much as Jen loved catching the sand fleas for her dad, she loved exploring the shoreline, looking for shark teeth and sand dollars even better. She walked, the sun's heat reflecting off her t-shirt and drying the ocean splashes on her swimsuit. She watched the butterfly clams hurriedly dig themselves back under the sand as the waves crashed away from the shore. She picked up a conch. It had looked perfect from her vantage, but she saw it was broken and incomplete. Sweat dripped down her face as she examined a broken sand dollar, and she became aware of how hot and thirsty she was. She threw the sand dollar down and was about to turn around when she saw something white sticking out of the sand a bit further at the beach. She glanced back down the other way and could just make out the distant shape of her dad standing by his fishing poles. A strong breeze along the shore blew her way, and she covered her nose, surprised by the sudden smell. She had grown accustomed to the soft rot of seaweed and fish guts, and had even found a dead seagull on their last fishing trips, which she had examined in curious disgust. But this was something different. She continued farther and thought she could make out an arm. Was someone out here napping? She didn't see any fishing gear. A squawking seagull dove over her head and landed on the ground by the arm. She muttered, "Damn bird," in her best impression of her dad, and glanced down. It was indeed an arm, but Jen couldn't see the rest of the body. The arm stuck out of the sand, the hand fingers up, as if asking, "Hey, give me a hand, won't you?" The seagull squawked at her and pecked at the sand near the arm and came up with a small gray chunk of something fleshy in its beak. It flapped its wings and took off down the shoreline. The sand near the arm seemed to be softly teeming with movement, and Jen imagined hundreds of sand fleas burying themselves under the surface. She lifted her t-shirt to cover her nose and gaped at the arm. The arm was small and delicate with a light freckling. Jen looked back behind her, the distant poles shimmering in the sunshine. She wanted to run back to her dad, but her legs wouldn't work. She bent over the arm, trying to see if the movement was the rest of the body under the sand. She wanted to tell whoever this kid was, buried here and wait, that he must be laughing so hard under the sand to stop playing this game. She imagined, then felt herself digging around the base of the arm and jolted back when the arm fell over. The small hand now seemed to be grasping her ankle. She fought off a high-pitched scream and drew her leg back. The flesh at the end of the arm was chewed and ragged, and several bloated sand fleas, ghost crabs, and bloodworms crawled lazily beneath and around the grizzled bone of the arm socket. Jen saw something else, something light blue that had emerged from beneath the arm, and she dragged herself away. She ran down the beach, her small legs pumping, her face stricken with snot and tears, gasping air. She ran towards those poles, and the closer she seemed to get, the further they appeared. She could smell the smoke from her dad's cigarette and the sour smell of spilled beer, and she screamed and screamed for him. "Daddy, Daddy, please." But the words were swallowed in the roars of the waves. She fell on the sand, her little body exhausted. She turned her face towards the waves, and even though she was safe up on the shoreline, it crashed over her, stilling her breath. She tumbled beneath the water, dragged down, suddenly staring up at the sunlight streaming on the water's surface. She looked beneath her and saw the old 79 truck slowly settling to the ocean floor below her. Air bubbles floated from the truck, and she imagined her dad blowing bubbles through a wand, and she tried to pop one as it bobbed around her. Her vision blurred as she watched her light blue hat float lazily above her as she drifted down. Her last delicious moment before total blackness came was watching her delicate and lightly freckled arms seeming to wave, seeming to dance in the water. And she sang to herself as she sank, "Lollipop, lollipop, oh lolly, lollipop." Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was amazing. I'm so excited to hear another one of your stories.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for listening. I need some work, but I thank you for letting me share it.
No, it's gorgeous. And it's such a gorgeous companion piece to the rattle, which I'm really excited for everybody else to read. You have a very specifically a beautiful way of capturing grief in all of your work, which I really appreciate.
Thank you.
Anna, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I am going to introduce Linda. I am very excited to do. Linda, is that J silent?
It is. I don't know why it's there. It's because it's a Polish name. I don't know why it's there.
Is it
But, you know.
Wojtowick?
It's Wojtowick.
Wojtowick? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. There is a finality and an evenness to Linda Wojtowick's poetic voice that commands the fullness of her reader's attention. Her poetry feels whole, like a complete trip, a car ride or a pause on a walk on a cold morning. Linda Wojtowick, in one of my favorite bios that we've received, Linda Wojtowick is a scruffy roustabout from Montana, now living in Portland, Oregon. She is a writer and collaborator on the podcast, The Ghosts on This Road. Please welcome Linda.
Thank you. Oh my God, you guys, this is so much fun. I'm loving it. See, I'm gonna adjust my lighting a little bit to get more of like a story time kind of a feel. Ooh.
Oh, nice.
Love it.
Campfire situation.
Let's see if this will work out for me seeing this actual text. Yeah, I thought I would read a story of mine that was on the podcast. This is called Ground Bird. They lived out in the hills. Well, not really in the hills, but in the flat part just before or after, depending on where you came from. Something about that place at that time was it seemed that from wherever you came, from whatever direction or town, the hills rose up in front of you in your far sight. And they looked very steep and grand, and you knew you'd reach them if you just kept going. Up ahead, always, big waves on the bluing plain. They had chickens and a rooster, a black and streaky thing. They had heard that it would watch over the hens. But that year, that bursting year, the year of bank accounts and cans, it began doing something strange. It started to crow in the middle of the night, while it was dark, when it shouldn't be crowing at all, when it should make no noise. This happened once, a few times. His dreams got little rips, leaked out and burned. He started waking up, first in his mind, down the nerves running out through the ends of his limbs. And then he woke up for real, pulsing with shock. But he tried to stay still and he tried not to move. But as his faculties fumbled back, he knew. He knew that wasn't right. And as he waited for another sound, he thought, a rooster should announce the dawn. That is mostly all. But one will sometimes crow in the night. And if it does indeed crow in the night, it means that a threat has been detected. It means that danger is near. He also did know it can mean some other things, but what those things were, he didn't know. As with all signals, there is a risk of misinterpretation. You can tell the wrong tales. So let's get to the tale. The tale is one night out of character, one night out of blue, one night off book. The rooster crows when it shouldn't. The rooster crows too early, which is to say too late. It crows deep back under the nail of night, about 3 a.m, the hour of the witch. You see, the neighbors, there way before them, dug in, strident on their family's plot, have chickens and also a rooster, which crows screeching at jagged day. Though they wouldn't have chosen such an agreement, such an awareness of the world. They have gotten used to it, and even sometimes are comforted by it. Not often, but sometimes, by the clock of its call. They stir together under a swirling cream of blankets, of night dessert. It is jarring, the cries of the bird in the hour of the witch, but not worth troubling over, they think. After all, it is crowing as usual, just earlier. Maybe the wretched thing just got disoriented. Besides, it isn't all that much earlier, just a bit, just a couple of hours. But even still, it comes across like a screaming baby, in that way that a big cat or a low-killed thing comes forth. And their own animals are afoot. Every night now they bring the dogs in, then worry after the cats. The neighbors don't say anything, and he supposes he doesn't expect them to. It rolls by, this stretch, and they forget about it. But it happens again. So, of course, he has to deal with it. Before rising, he looks over at the shape in the bed. Before the breath and ribs shift and push down the sheets. Before the corn silk hair. There is nothing else, howls the rooster. You'll have to take it from here. There is nothing else I can do for you. One more time. And because it's out there and getting closer, because it's out there and we will likely not have another chance. Let's start once more at the front end. Let's start from the top. The rooster crowed in the deep of night, in the crook, in the hour of the witch. The wide strands of moonlight coming in the window, the bedroom window and the round hall window and the ridged plastic prism of the bathroom plank glowed, pulsed like wires, in their blueness, in their ice, in their strong arm down from space. He strained to hear it, to dissect the music. He hadn't done that before. He strained for hitches, for clues. The house was a soft thing. He realized this for perhaps the first time. Common, indiscreet, overconfident. Something was out there, combing closer through the fields, and the thought that it could be prevented from reaching their home and entering was pure hubris, human brass. How sure was it? How bent the gate? The rooster had a jagged comb ripping up nerves. It split its little candy beak, snipping on the sky. Oh, dear God, he thought. Oh, my Lord. But he had no Lord, and it was cheap in these moments to pretend that he did. It was a problem. It was a paper fan. He could smell its teeth, the shining gums with spit and push, its gum with pink, its bladder membrane over bone. The kitchen popped. The pantry heaved silent with sugar and herring and pearly mayonnaise. The duck pond slid toward the sea. He was so caught up he didn't hear her stir. She sat straight, facing away from him, feet already swung down, shoulder blades like wings pushed in the mold of her back. She twisted economically all the way around to face him. So, she said, what's the plan? We dealing with this one together, or? Her eyes were tired, steely, going uphill. Or are you going it alone? She waited. He felt both blinding bright and ripped away. She pulled a picked up sweater down. What have you done this time? She said. Or is the question, what haven't you done?
Wow, we're done. Thank God you have a podcast. I mean, honestly.
I literally just subscribed to your podcast.
Oh my God. That's so sweet. That's so
would
sweet.
all
Yeah.
listen to you read anything ever
Oh my God.
all the time.
It's a date.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for letting me.
Also, this lighting, like,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I didn't. It was more magical than I had anticipated.
yeah. yeah.
Very
Thrift-
ethereal.
Thrift
Don't
store
change anything.
lamps. Don't underestimate them.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Christine is going to introduce our next presenter, Christina. Christine specifically requested to introduce Christina. Christine is our administrative coordinator. And yeah, Christine, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be speaking kind of loud because I'm at a bar right now at a hotel. But I'm really, really pleased to introduce Christina Kelly Holmes. There is a surreal, hilarious otherworldliness to Christina Kelly Holmes's Water Dog that defies expectation. A short story inspiring a short film of the same name, Holmes's narrative certainly has a cinematic quality, filled with jarring imagery and vivid, rich characterization. Christina Kelly Holmes is a 2020 graduate of the screenwriting program at the American Film Institute Conservatory. She is the recipient of both the 2020 Russo Brothers AGBO/AFI Development Grant and the 2021 AFI Writers Room Ready Award. Her identity as a first-generation Romanian and mixed-race woman and her experiences as a third-culture kid influence her storytelling. Christina was born in New Jersey, raised in London, and received a bachelor's degree in sociology from Colorado College. After working as a strategist for various startups in the tech industry, she redirected her career towards writing. She was most recently a writer's assistant on Amazon Citadel.
Thanks,
Thank
Christine.
you. Thank you so much, Christine. People often call me Christine instead of Christina, and I've like stopped correcting them, but I really
Babe, I get
should.
the same thing.
Right? It just happens with all the Chris names. First, I want to say that I have been loving this reading, in large part because sometimes, especially if you work in film and TV, narrative structure can feel, and storytelling generally can feel so prescriptive. And then you realize like you could literally tell a story about anything and you can tell it in any way you want to. And so it's been like really amazing to just hear and see some of these things. So yeah, so just want to say that. I think I'm going to read an excerpt from Water Dog. It is from the last bit of it. And then I was thinking in terms of the short film. So I did adapt my own short story into a short film. And the short film, we shot it about a month ago. So we're like deep in post. And yeah, and so initially I was like, oh, maybe it'd be good to show kind of the pitch deck and sort of the starting the process, but I pulled a few frames from it and then I just kind of created this slide. So I'll go through it, which was basically just questions I had for myself while in the adaptation and filmmaking process. And I know a lot of you guys are multidisciplinary artists and filmmakers as well. So I kind of want it to be more conversational if possible, but yeah, cool. So let me go ahead and pull up the reading. All right, I'm just gonna head into it and without explaining anything, we'll see how this works. And this is again from Water Dog. So is anyone going to ask? He looked at me and then at my Harriet. Ask what, she said. You haven't noticed? She can't eat, certainly can't drink. I think she's definitely showing by now, he said. A pause and another long stare down. She's pregnant. What, did you think she was just fat? Both Harriets laughed at this. Congrats, my Harriet shot off. I've only met her once before. I wouldn't really know comparatively what she looks like, I trailed off. He smacked me on the back and grabbed my shoulder the way a kid might when he's about to climb his friend to get to something taller. Then to me, he whispered, chuffed I am. Imagine me, a dad. I really couldn't associate anything wholesome with his life, but who's to say kids need wholesome lives? Plenty of kids grow up dirty and poor and mix bread and end up at low-paying jobs with 2 degrees and an unfathomable amount of student loans. I look over at the Harriets, mulling over terms and due dates. Harriet and I are thinking of getting pregnant, I said, for some reason. My Harriet shot me a look and rolled her eyes. How she does both so fast, I'll never know. She never reprimanded me when I lied, just rolled her eyes. I think it would be only me getting pregnant if science taught me right, she said. It takes 2 to tango, I said, again for no real good reason. She smirked and turned back to head Harriet to ponder more over her invisible uterus. I wish I knew more about gestation. A kid I grew up with bred hamsters in our apartment complex, but I never really paid attention to his weird hobbies. When it was time to go, we packed our coats and said our goodbyes. An overly firm handshake from him and a sweet tilt from head Harriet. My Harriet wished them well with the pregnancy. We climbed down the stairs and headed for the subway, riding in silence back to our apartment. Harriet seemed distantly upset in the way only time and space helps. I was happy to keep quiet until we crawled into bed later that night and she could tell me how I was wrong. On the subway, I kept thinking it was strange he didn't poke his head out the apartment door after we left, like how he slipped out last time to comment on his wife's attractive face. I was waiting for him to shout down something obscene or ridiculous to us out his living room window. He usually liked getting the last word, but this time he carried on like an adult, someone with a past that doesn't affect his future, someone with a wife and a kid on the way, bodiless or not. It was perplexing, the whole thing. Okay, so that was from the last bit of Water Dog. I'm gonna pull up the slide. Let me see the best way to do this. Okay. All right, and all right, this is a way larger format. Cool. All right. So that excerpt is again from the end of the short story. And the short story deals primarily with 4 characters, and our main character, which you'll see down, well, actually in both these frames, is in a dog suit on Halloween evening, and he runs into an old friend, which he keeps, throughout the evening, sort of keeps comparing their lives and revisiting his life in the past couple of years. Just so you know, these men aren't the best men. A lot of thought went into how to kind of present that in film form. All right, I wrote up here, this is a quote from Joyce Carol Oates, and it was actually part of a critique she had about the adaptation of her short story, Where Have You Been, or Where Have You Coming, Where Have You Been? I always forget the order of that, but I'm sure you guys know it's one of her most famous ones. And one thing she said is that the writer works in a single dimension and the director works in 3. And she meant this as, in a way of saying, I didn't love this adaptation, but I know it's really hard to do. One of the things I think about when adapting literature, and I say this not just like for my own work, but partly as a viewer of things, right? We all can love a book or a short story, and it can either not exactly translate well to screen, or it does, and it sort of takes its story beyond your expectations. But also I have a background as a reader where I had to read a lot of material and sort of see how it can be realized on screen. So a big thing for me when I was going through this process was thinking about whose gaze is this? And of course, when you're reading, you immediately understand, like, this is first person, this is third person, how close or far away are we from this this protagonist or this narrator. And so for me, one of the more interesting things about adapting this is that part of Water Dog is sort of a critique on the gaze. So it's told through the story or through the eyes of the narrator, but all in a way to explore a kind of a layer of themes in the story. So when I wanted to translate it to film, one of the things I thought about deeply is how to get at this point. So I, in fact, started using a lot of voiceover so we can kind of externalize this character's thoughts. But one thing I wanted to establish is that you're with him so long, but the very first shot of the movie, which you'll see up here in the left-hand corner, is someone looking at him. And that's, for me, was really big because I wanted to establish that it's not really about him. It's about someone observing him. And as we go throughout the movie, you kind of get more of a sense of that. One thing to note, if you haven't read the short story, it deals with a floating head. So that sort of ties into the gaze as well. So the other thing I thought deeply about was how to distill themes. So I think when you're reading, you're so open to this world and these characters, and there could be, because of language, there's so much nuance when you're, for like a word perspective, or singular word or a sentence structure, and there's so much to unpack, and you have the time to unpack it. I think typically, because people who are looking at movie or film format, you're taking in so much at the same time. I found that it was like easier to really hone in on just one theme to present in a story. So it is absorbed more easily. But that's totally just, it could be just a me thing. But particularly for the story, it felt like that was the best route to take. And for that, I decided to really focus on like male fragility within heterosexual partner dynamics. So that was kind of like where I really wanted, sort of at the end of every scene or every moment, to really tie back to that. And then the other things I sort of think about is genre, can be these like guiding posts when you're exploring really anything, any form of art, and how specifically for film, the visual aesthetics and the sound design contribute to the emotional through line. So, sorry, I have to sneeze. Okay. And for Water Dog, I really thought about, we have this like truly like this hangdog narrator who is so self-loathing. And it really reminded me of, even when I was writing this short story, but certainly when I was translating it to film, remind me of these detectives in old noir movies who are just, again, kind of like self-loathing, and also typically love and hate women at the same time. And I think these are sort of all qualities that my character protagonist possessed. So a lot of the visuals pull from noir. But then, of course, because you're dealing with floating head and a lot of these sort of absurdist humor and imagery, I also really wanted to weave in sort of horror and absurd horror into that. So a lot of that is actually coming through in the sound design, which has been very cool to explore. But yeah, those are sort of the types of things that I was thinking about for this. And then, of course, when you're specifically adapting for a short film, and I'm sure many of you know this, there are budget constraints. And I think, in large part, short films are, there's not a lot of funding in this country for short films. So you have to think pretty critically about, how to spend the money on this film. And I think ultimately a lot of it for this short came down to how to condense scenes based on emotional resonance. So for instance, if you read the short story Water Dog, it takes place over about a week, and he meets the friend's wife, who is a floating head, goes home to his own girlfriend, tries to unpack this, and then decides to bring his girlfriend back over to dinner to kind of get a second pair of eyes and see if she sees what he sees. And of course, everyone kind of continues on as normal, and he sort of, descends a little bit into his I'm not going to say madness, but his own thoughts, because that's sort of his usual go-to is to become this interior person. So for that, again, because of budget constraints, it just made more sense to condense it all to one night. And that also meant using 2 locations, which was a fun way to kind of problem solve how to do flashbacks within locations, because the narrator does look back on his life. So that was kind of a fun thing to work with through with my DP, and my production designers. And then essentially we have the protagonist's girlfriend coming into the apartment at the same time as our protagonist. So the emotional resonance is still there. It's sort of like he's seeing a floating head, and why is no one else seeing it? It just all kind of happens at the same time. And then finally, the other little note that I wrote here is I really wanted to, I think short films in particular, people are often like, is it a proof of concept? Like what are you using this for, and how, what do you want out of this? And so kind of having that in the back of my mind when I was going through the process, and ultimately, this is probably not like the best answer, but like ultimately I just wanted people to go through this experience and want to spend more time with the characters, even though they might not be the most likable characters, but who likes likable characters? No one. And kind of want more from this world, and just kind of, I think, through the absurd humor and through the visuals of this floating head, just really lean in and ask, like, what is this film about? But not in a way where it's like, I'm deeply confused by this film, but in a way where you're engaged and really wanting to unpack the themes. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. So that's kind of my little work through when I was kind of making this movie, and I'm happy to like answer any questions, or if people have their own experiences. I know you guys all have like experiences doing this, and or if not, like there's probably short stories or novels that they've been adapted, and you probably think about like, wait, why did that work, or why did that not work? But yeah, anyway,
Christina, how'd you do the head?
How did I do the head? Oh my God, great question. We had a lot of back and forth, a lot of VFX people, but ultimately we decided to put her in a green morph suit. So we had the actor in a green morph suit.
Was that really good for your budget?
It was pretty split. It could have been either or when we like did the calculations, but I think ultimately we chose a morph suit because I think it would have helped for performance, because otherwise we would have been shooting against a green screen, and I think it was helpful to have her in the room and working and with the other actors.
Amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I was so curious how you were gonna do it. What's your post schedule looking like? When can we see this thing?
I am hoping Picture Lock is in 2 weeks, and then we have a lot of VFX stuff to push through. So I'm hoping that by June 5th, we'll have a finished product, and I'm happy to share.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Cool.
Anybody else have any questions about the process? I'm curious, actually. I know me and Jennifer make like short films as well. Does anybody else? Okay, so
Yeah,
Stephanie. I was looking at you. I was like, what's the category?
Like, do I call them that? I don't, kind of. Yeah, why not?
I think
Yeah,
Stephanie,
claim it.
yeah, you call it all the things. That's amazing. Christina, we're really excited to watch it.
I have a
Thank
quick
you.
question,
Yeah.
Christina. What is your, like, do you have a film festival goal? Because that always has to be part of like the budget too. I was just, like, what's your dream one that you would hope this one would get into?
My dream one. It's a good question. Probably I had my eyes set on. Ooh, I just got into on South by Southwest, but there's also this horror one in Los Angeles. Its name escapes me. Hold on, I'm gonna
Is
look
it
it up right now.
Etheria?
Or, say again. What did you say?
Etheria, maybe?
It's not that. I'm literally googling as we speak. Where
Holly
is it going?
Short.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Holly Shorts.
Holly Shores is great. They always have really fun stuff too. Man, what is this called? But oh man, I don't know why I can't find it. But there's this great one that I live in Los Angeles, so it's like local to me. That would be fun. But I think there, programming is so interesting for all these places, and I think it's I have a lot of thoughts on on festivals, but I think ideally you want to be in a place that you feel like the programmers like really understand what you're trying to go for. But yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts, but South by Southwest I think is like has a lot of really interesting stuff that comes out of it. And so that would be kind of fun. But yeah.
I can already tell just from like that screenshot, the coloring and the lighting and his dog suit. Like I'm really excited. I'm excited to see it and excited for you.
Thank
It's
you.
a great
It's
story.
pre-colored, so it's good that you like it already.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see it. And thanks so much for talking about that process. That's so exciting and fascinating to hear about that. Yeah, what that was like to do to your own work. I think that's always really, yeah, that's a tough one. A specific set of challenges.
Totally.
Okay. Our last presenter is Ra. and is gonna intro.
Yay. Okay. Ra pronunciation check. Ra Gerg.
You got it.
Awesome. Okay. Yay. Also, thank you all so much for being here. This is such a lovely way to spend a Sunday, and it has been such an honor to spend all of this time with you today. Okay. Ra Gerg's wildness reads like a long walk on a strange moonlit night. There's an intimacy and a mythology to their poetry that invites the reader to bask in the disorder, to release into it, and become excited by it. Ra Gerg is a mixed media artist working across painting, sculpture, textiles, print, drawing, and installation-based practices, and graduates this spring with a BFA from Rhode Island School of Design. They have been exploring ways of writing which feel more enmeshed with their artistic practice, and after this fall's research and work with paper pulp, they identify more with the term cryptid than painter. Love, absolutely love. Please welcome Ra.
Thank you so much for that lovely intro. I have a little bit of writing that I think will help to contextualize this project for you guys. And then I'll be sharing my screen with a video that kind of compiles a reading of the poem with my studio practice. So I'll read my little intro now. So, over the last year, I followed a gut feeling into the public bathroom as a fascinating location of bodily abstraction, the site of exerted social pressures and controlled behavioral cues, and always a strange place to walk into as a genderqueer person. I often work with paper, but I became newly invested in turning surface into substance, its most basic element, the sloppy paper pulp. My studio took on the role of Frankenstein's laboratory, zapping otherwise tame, orderly units into feral amalgams, more resembling mottled skins and hides than a surface that neutrally invites marks. And as my monsters came to life, they asked for structure, for spine. They merged with grid-like wire mesh, chicken wire, nets, crochet, cheesecloth, and shaped mache forms. In this process of dissolving and reforming, some beings took to their new forms and really soared, where others soured, grew brittle, and eventually were repulped. I found myself invested in Jack Halberstam's text, Wild Things, The Disorder of Desire, which was encircled by more texts exploring queer animality, horror, and monstrosity, and followed yet by the fleeting correlation between the paranoia surrounding the public restroom and that of the werewolf. Both entities are sites of performance, of passing and clocking, of perceived predators and threats, and of transformation. The fear of being a target in bathroom panic formed around myths of bathroom infiltration surrounds these sites of cultural make-believe. So, what if there really was a predator in the bathroom, a queer werewolf undercover as a person, personified by all those who feel ill at ease, strange, and are painted as monsters in these necessary but deeply politicized rooms? No one enters a bathroom without really needing to. This werewolf, upon entering the bathroom, has to take on a form unrecognizable to the self, an extremely conformed gender performance catered to the binary codes of the space, one which feels quite monstrous and unsettling indeed. In both Halberstam's Female Masculinity and Sheila L. Kavanaugh's Queering Bathrooms, testimonials of butch, trans, and gender deviant folks meet the women's restroom with fear, shame, anger, and often go at all lengths to fully avoid the space. I ask, who do we become when we enter a bathroom? With its stalls, closed doors, but still open slits to spy through, full of sterile materials, colors, and textures, often featuring scrawled or scratched messages. Also containing the magic abstraction of plumbing, the blasting off of waste to be cleaned. Within this in and out flow, the locked in time, dirty caulk and stall hieroglyphics, we become spies, nobodies, peering eyes in the forested wilds, staring at shoes and silhouettes and not meeting each other's eyes, never talking unless forced to. I installed my pieces in a bathroom where unexpected visitors stumbled into a transformed space, spilling with painted images, gridded, pulpy forms, and scraps of research. All in all, offering portals and revealing the great strangeness already quite present in the space without any intervention necessary. These images which brought the momentum forward for this poem and video project are at the end of the piece, and I hope you enjoy this foray into beautiful counter-mythologizing grammars of madness. So I'll try to pull that up and get the audio to work, hopefully. I just have to figure out the right way to share.
Just click the two boxes that come up on the right-hand side.
Okay. Share sound and optimize for video clip.
You got it.
Let's see if this works. Oh no, it says to share my computer audio, please install the Zoom audio device.
Oh, good.
I don't want to do that. I'm just gonna send this link in the chat and maybe
Well, I
you
can play
share
it. Just send it and I'll play it on my computer.
Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and share that in the chat. How annoying. Zoom is always hiding
Some Zoom
weird updates.
propaganda.
Honestly.
We don't want your app. We don't want your secondary app.
Okay,
All right, there's the link.
let's do this.
Hopefully the quality improves.
Oh, surprise.
In the train of the pharaoh, bodies flee, escape, hide, and seek. They express themselves not simply in same-sex or opposite-sex orientations, but through murderous desires, violent longings, flights from time, chaotic and illegible political associations, and deeply felt relations to animals and the wild. Jack Halberstam, The Disorder of Desire. I'm scared of living in the city. I need to see where the moon crests the horizon, sightline unlocked, to see my future ahead, where to aim for. What if I can't see the moon and go fucking crazy? Rip my skin off like tearaway pants. Magic, maul the audience. Birds pick off tufts around the night fur, to their nests, a protective ward not to be fucked with. Now they take on the auxiliary guise of wear-tit, wear-sparrow, disappear into the night. They build their nests on the crafty form of my den, which took after their construction. Biologists will find this dwelling come spring-fall and have no reference for what they find. No chart, no known relationship. Wildness is not the lack of inscription. It is inscription that seeks not to read or be read, but to leave a mark as evidence of absence, loss, and death. So they pretended to forget about it, left a question mark in their file, and threw it in the mud.
Very wolf.
Murderous.
Werewolf.
Desirous.
Werewolf.
Violent.
Werewolf.
Lawless.
Werewolf.
Flight.
Werewolfes. Werewolfers. Werewolfers. Wazi wolfes. Alkefnol. Alfin. Luthen. Vukajina. Vargelf. Gar Wallet. Lias Wars. Rule. Vruf. Vilkudlok. Vukudlok. Wyroku. Leucanthropia.
Sitting on the toilet, wrapped in a towel, imagining ripping the tits off, fleeing into the tide where the moving buckets all piece ourselves back together to make peace with things beyond our shallow thinking. Matter moves through me, and there are moments where people see others in me. Other people I've read, people I've consumed, people I've passed. I think it might be best described as a process with multiple sites overcoming harmony. In the bathroom, luckily vacant, were paranoid lettering in the historical texts scrawled on the stars. Washing my hands, scrubbing my filth, making a start. Before passing through the binary door, performing domesticity for possible onlookers, ready to make me pray, if not for a camouflage, if not for the moon's gracious crescent. Passing as a narrative assumes that there is a self that masquerades as another kind of self, and does so successfully at various moments. The successful parts may cohere into something akin to identity. I wish to access some great I was not raised with, some toiling angst untamed, not sheltered in the closet. The access of speakable/unspeakable, knowable/unknowable. From within the well of loneliness, the creature inside me explains, you're neither unnatural, nor borrowed, nor mad. You're as much a part of a people formation as anyone else, only you're unexplained as yet. Do I want the light, or is it just my needs? Would I regret the perk of it, entering my bloodstream? I feel the desire to become feral, peculiar, and unknowable. Make cute sense that some form of wildness can be contracted and experienced vicariously with
So at the end here, after the credits, there's some pictures of the installation in the backroom space.
Wolf, Variant Wolf, Word Wolf, Naya Wolf, or Wire Wolf is Naya Wolf, Wire Wolf, Wire Wolf is Wazzy Wolf, Wire Wolf, Oh Chestnut, Wazzy Wolf is Oh Chestnut, Fragina, Gargo, Fragina, all that, Gargo, Piasaur, Gar, all that, Cool, Piasaurs, Pioku,
Thank you.
That was amazing. Wow. Incredible.
Not how you would have done it.
Oh, wait.
You bundle things right. That gives you up to 10% on USA home
No,
auto
sorry,
insurance.
guys. That was very cool.
That's how I got it.
Thank you, Ra. That was amazing. I wanted to open it up and just see if anybody has any questions for any specific contributors, or want to say anything. I'm so just like, I'm almost speechless, to be honest, because this was so spectacular and delightful. And I don't know, we've spent so much work, like time with your work, and it feels so incredibly gratifying to see your faces and see these other forms that your work take on. And it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. Yeah, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I second all of that. I think it is so exciting. We had the live event yesterday, and I think it's just to be able to see all of the other kinds of forms and mediums, the video presentations, the art, the film, that like it's so exciting to see all of the different ways that the work it metamorphoses, morphs into different formats, and I'm really grateful for all of you sharing all of it with us.
Yeah, very multi-talented group. Well, I know it's it's getting late on this coast. I still feel like it's the middle of the day, but I also want to let everybody have a lovely rest of their Sunday. But it's been truly such a privilege to spend it with you guys, and I can't wait to see what everybody does next. And thank you to our audience members as well. It's really special to be able to share it with you. Thank you guys so, so, so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.